let some of our church family tell their stories. Stories of struggle, stories of not so wise choices, stories of regret, stories of questioning, stories of victory, stories of answered prayers, stories of brand new starts. And the reason that we're doing this is we want to recognize as a church family that all of us, first of all of us have a story. And that all of our stories probably have some flaws, some twists and turns, some things that we wish weren't part of our story, but they are. We recognize that even if sometimes people outside of the church think of us as thinking too highly of ourselves, think of us as we think we've got our act together. And maybe some of us, even in this room, assume that everybody else around us always makes the right choices. Things always go well for them, no matter what. To recognize, man, we are all struggling to get through this world. That at different times, we do things exactly right and the exact way that we're supposed to. And at times, we fall flat on our faces. And at times we are close to God and we are so intimately connected with Him, and at other times we feel so completely distant. But through all these stories, recognize this is us. This is part of who we are. And hopefully to give us the opportunity to invite other people who don't have a church family to connect with, who don't have a relationship with Jesus, who don't realize that Jesus is desperately seeking people who have flaws, who have regrets, who have made mistakes, and that He loves them passionately and wants them to be a part of a relationship with Him. Hopefully that's what's happening through these stories, because this is us. And this is who we are. This is who our church family is. Now, this morning, we're going to hear another story from a family in our church family. And as a part of introducing that story to you, I wanted to read you a text that I got on my phone at 10:29 a.m. on January the 11th. Here's what the text said. Pray for Kennedy. The school just called. She had a seizure. She has stopped breathing. They got her back and stabilized. We're headed there now. She was gone. They brought her back. They're headed to the hospital. That's the text that I got. And I got that text from Kennedy Allison. And I know some of you are familiar with the story. You saw it maybe in the newspaper when it happened. You may have seen it on TV stations, but I want you to hear from the Allison family their story of what happened on January the 11th of this year.
So 3 months ago today, Kennedy had sudden cardiac arrest at school. The day started like a normal day. Her and Landon left for school. Fridays, it was a Friday. I have a lot of conference calls that day, so I normally stay at home and don't go to my normal office at the hauler. Keith was home getting ready to head back to Oklahoma for duck hunting, and I was finishing up my second call, and my phone rang, and it was Keith Martin, who is our assistant superintendent. I didn't think anything of it. Finished my call, called him back probably within a couple minutes, left him a message. Hey, I'm off a conference call. Let me know if you need me. Another minute went by. PRHS called. I answered the phone. It was the assistant principal, and Mr. Rapp said, I'm looking for the parents of Kennedy Allison. I said, this is her mother. He said, Kennedy has suffered some sort of seizure-like episode, and we're going to need to take her to the hospital. I said, okay, we'll meet you there. In my mind, I'm thinking, something has happened. She's sitting in a chair. We need to go see what's wrong. We start getting ready. I just yelled at Keith and said, hey, we got to go to the hospital. Kennedy's had a seizure. The phone rang again. It was Mr. Martin again, and he kind of said the same thing, and then he added, but they have her stable. And so at that point, I knew it was more serious, but I'm still thinking it's a seizure, and I'm trying to just wrap my head around. I started getting emotional, and I'm like, we got to go. We got to hurry. As we're driving, and I'm trying to keep it together, I called a friend who's the cheer coach and the scholarship coordinator, so she's not always in a class. Thought maybe she would know what was going on. And she answered, and I said, do you know what's going on with Kennedy? And she said, in a very calm voice, she said, she passed out in class. She wasn't breathing. There was no heartbeat. There was no pulse. They had to do CPR, use the AED machine, but they got a rhythm back. EMTs are working on her now and about to put her in the ambulance to go to the hospital. I, at that point, kind of fall apart crying. She goes, do you want me to go with her? I said yes, because again, I don't know if she's awake or not awake. Is she scared? I mean, I don't know what any of this looks like. And she said, okay. And so we just kept going really fast. And I kind of told him what happened. Some of the things that I start getting emotional about is, at that point I'm like praying, and y'all all know my story, but I also am going, Daddy, go tell him not to take her. Because I was really scared. So we got to the school. The ambulance was still there. I got in the ambulance. They were working on her in the back. Keith went in the school with the principal. They had Landon in the office because they pulled him out of class. He didn't really know what was going on either. I don't know really what they had told him to that point. I mean, they all knew the AED machine had been pulled because the alarm went off. And they went on full lockdown. No one transitioned classes. But he goes, we all thought it was a teacher. I mean, he didn't know it was her. And he's even said since that he didn't know until a day or two in that she had, died at school. And they had brought, he couldn't process all that. So then we rushed to Northwest. I asked on the way, I said, is there a reason we're going to Northwest and not straight to Children's like in Springdale? Just thinking because she's a child. And he said, no, protocol on this level of emergency is the nearest hospital, which was fine. I had just asked the question. So we went to Northwest. They were waiting on us. I mean, they were awesome. They took her in immediately, transitioned her from these machines to that machine, and started tests, blood tests, CT, chest x-ray, trying to find, is there some reason that this happened? Because I had a thought. I vividly remember her taking a water bottle that day, filling a water bottle before she left, and I thought, in my head at one point, I thought someone put something in her water bottle. I can't figure out why, this has happened. They told us pretty quickly. I mean, people are already starting to, show up, as we've posted, or Keith did a good job posting some things out there, getting prayers going, but that they would be working to transfer us to someone who could take better care of her. Going back and hearing the nurse even talk about it, and she told the story several times, and I thought, did she say this in her head, that she said, Lord help me, Jesus? But then the teacher told the story, and she goes, and Lorraine goes, Lord help me, Jesus, to start the CPR, because she knew her. I mean, her little grandsons are always on her hip at the ball games. Sorry. But, it was scary. And I would almost say it was scary for not very long, because the minute that we kind of knew she appeared to be going to be okay, there was just, I had a calmness about me that if God orchestrated everything so perfectly to save her in the moment that she was gone, that he wasn't going to stop there. She was going to be okay. And there was still, hurdles to get past. And we had to wait for her to wake up to know, was she there, because we didn't know about oxygen deprivation to the brain and just what that was going to look like. But I don't know, I just felt like it was going to be okay. I took a 2-hour nap between midnight and 2 a.m. when she finally started waking up around 2 or 2:30, and then when she responded to us saying her name and me saying I love you, and she mouthed it back. I mean, we knew she was in there. Kennedy was in there. So that is kind of where the journey started.
No parent ever wants to get that phone call that your kid is in trouble, hurting, or in her situation, she was gone. We just, the first thing I did, I started praying. I started reaching out to people that prayed. And I knew if anybody could fix it, it was God. So that was my first step, was to initiate that, that conversation. And, there was, like Jennifer said, there was too many things that had to go right. There's too many steps that had to take place and had to work perfectly for her to survive.
It even goes back to the fact that it didn't happen 2 hours before at home.
Yes.
Or in the car going to school.
Yeah.
Because it required the AED. So the fact that she was in a location that could be used is what saved her life.
Yeah.
Being anywhere else wouldn't have had us sitting here right now.
Yeah, she wouldn't be here. And, for me, that's not coincidence. I mean, everything that happened from that standpoint to the fact that Coach King and Nurse Lorraine, they taught CPR together for 19 years. And, they told us that when Lorraine was with Kennedy, when she saw her on the floor, of course, her heart sank, because she is the one that's hauling babies around on her hip, and it happened to be her grandkids. But she said when Coach King came in the room, there was a calmness that came over her, and he said the same thing. When he saw it was her, it was a calmness that came over him. And the two of them, they teach CPR together. They've been doing it for 19 years. The fact that they had the AED there, they were trained in it, the school, their protocols were all just, they couldn't have handled it any better. The EMTs told us that. For me, that's not coincidence. None of that happened by coincidence. It's God. Mm-hmm. So that's, that's the comforting part. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's any one thing that really stood out as much as there was all the steps that were leading up to this. In my opinion, the fact that they were prepared and the fact that they didn't panic, to me, God prepared them for this day. And the survival rate, we were told,
17%.
outside of school, 17%.
Outside of a hospital.
Hospital, yeah. Outside of a hospital, 17%. Inside's like
54 or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's you
die.
Yeah. It's bad stuff, know. But I don't know. There's just, once we got to a point where we knew she was going to be okay, you could really look back and go, we were in a panic for no reason. Once we saw all the steps that had taken place, that God had put all these things in place to take care of her, and that He does have a plan for her. We don't know what it is yet, but we do know through all the feedback and communication that we got through that whole process that He used her story to touch a lot of lives. We had people message us and say, just want to let you know, there's people from all over the country, just want to let you know that our church prayed for Kennedy today. I've had people call me and say, I just want to let you know that my faith in God has been renewed because of your daughter and the situation, So God used this situation to touch a lot of lives, not only that, it brought out a lot of importance of the need for the AEDs and that sort of thing, and that's great and all, but for me it was all about Him. It's like I was saying earlier, she when she woke up in the hospital, she just thought she woke up from a nap and was wondering why she was in the hospital. She doesn't remember anything happening, which is great in my opinion. I thank God for that. To me, He did that. She's not afraid. It's not like she remembers what happened and is worried about that happening again. To me, that's just another thing that God did for her at that time. And but there's been so much take place with her story and discussing it and telling the story and people asking her questions, and it's kind of, for her, it's kind of been like, I wasn't there.
Yeah. It's like being told a story. Or,
yeah, like,
did you
great.
see this movie?
Like,
you were the star.
I wasn't around for it. I don't know. I was asleep. So it's been kind of, I don't know, anticlimactic, or whatever you want to call it, for her, because she doesn't remember anything. She didn't know what she went through.
Before we could really think forward too much, we had friends approach us about, so many people wanting to help, and those that were really close to us knew about the job transitions that were going on, and things happening, and Keith going back to dog training, and he was in a 2-month window of guiding duck hunting before it all kicked off, and they're like, what about just gift cards, things that can help y'all, because everyone didn't know all the stories, but to use as you need them for groceries or whatever. And what that turned out to be to help us with, a couple weeks worth of work that was non-existent and things like that. That's another way that He provided and answered prayers before we even had the time to think about, we need to be praying about that piece of it.
To see God work right in front of your eyes, that is powerful. When you see it, you hear about it, but when you actually see it, it's incredible.
I joke about it a little bit, but I have these moments of like, it's scary enough to be a parent and you're trying to like raise decent, contributing human beings, but then when something like this happens, and I have two aspects of it. It's overwhelming sometimes, and I get emotional when I think about that we were chosen, the gift of her back, and so many parents don't get that. Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side of it, I'm like, don't screw it up. Like, things that overwhelm me, I'm so grateful, but you feel undeserving of, it's almost asking why us in a different way. It's not, I don't know that I've ever thought like, why did this happen to her? Like, it happened because that was part of her plan. It was part of what was written about her life. And I'm so grateful that we're on this side of it, but it is so like overwhelming that we got to be on this side of it. I can't imagine what it would be like on the other side, but I just know there's so many people that have to live it on that side. I don't know. It's just a really weird feeling that's, you want to live up to why we were chosen to get the gift.
That peace of mind came over me. I knew she was going to be okay. It was that easy for me. Yeah. I knew she was going to be okay. And I just knew that was part of His plan. I really didn't worry about the surgery when they were doing her implant.
I'm pretty sure he was asleep and I was playing Yahtzee. Literally, you had to do something and not be thinking about it. It was 3 to 4 hours. And when you knew that they were stopping her heart again because they had to test the device, you want to make sure it's going to work. But
I never bothered me a bit. Yeah. I was like, God's got it. Yeah.
So.
Isn't that an awesome story? I appreciate them sharing it with us. The night that we were videoing that, they had just gotten done it was kind of late at night. They just gotten done watching their son Landon play a baseball game, so that's why you see Kennedy kind of yawning a little bit. It was, and they were willing to come share that with us, and I'm very thankful for it. I just want to share a couple of thoughts with you to echo, I guess, in a way, some things that they shared, and will be done this morning. They consider having Kennedy back to be a miracle. And you know what? I do too. That is the working of God. I'm convinced of that. They had so many people who were in the right place at the right time with the right training to take care of her, and that's not an accident. They had so many people who came to their aid and ran errands for them and gave them gift cards and took care of them, and they experienced a huge amount of love and support that they never expected to receive. And their story has already impacted so many other people and impacted our community in so many different ways. There's several different school systems in our state now that are now getting AED devices or updating those devices. There's more school staff that's getting trained on those things. As a matter of fact, Flagstone, we purchased an AED device because of the Allison story. But there's one thing that I want to focus on this morning about their story. Something that Keith actually shared with me before we ever did this video, and something that they mentioned in the video as well. And that's the fact that God was already moving. God was already doing things to rescue Kennedy and to heal her and to help her family before they even knew that they were supposed to be praying about those things. It happened at school, where there were people who were trained to handle those things. Not when she was on the way to school, not when she was out with her friends. It happened in a place where people who had been trained in those things were prepared ahead of time and could help her. The doctors and the nurses at the different hospitals she was sent to were already ready, were already prepared for her showing up. All the different friends that came and helped in so many different ways that they never even asked for. There's all these different ways that God was already answering prayers for the Allison family before the Allison family was even praying about those things. And I want our church family, I want any of our guests this morning, I want anyone that may be watching this on our YouTube channel, anyone that wonders if our God is active and present and moving in this world, I want all of us to know and to be confident in the fact that yes, He is. Our God is present and He's active and He listens and He is constantly moving to action. Even sometimes when we don't realize that there's action that needs to be taken. God told His people hundreds of years ago through the prophet Isaiah. He said in Isaiah 65 verse 24, I will answer them before they even call to me. While they're still talking about their needs, I will go ahead and answer their prayers. There are times when God is answering my prayer. There are times when God is doing things and meeting my needs while I'm still formulating the words. And you might be saying this morning, you might hear that, you might hear the Allison story, you might hear me say those things, you might be saying, that sounds awesome. But I have a hard time believing that. I have a hard time seeing that. Why can't I see God working that way? And there may be lots of different reasons. Can I give you just a few this morning? Or why I might struggle to see God acting that way and moving action that way. And one reason is that I might not be looking. God may be doing some powerful things in my life, and I'm just not seeing it. And the reason I'm not seeing it is not because He's not doing anything. I'm just not looking for it. There's a story that's told about Jesus in Luke chapter 10 where He's at a house, and there's these two sisters that live in this house. And one of them is named Mary, and she's sitting at the feet of Jesus listening to everything He's saying. And the other sister, her name is Martha. And she's going around, she's fixing food, and she's taking care of people and meeting needs. And she gets mad. She comes to Jesus in Luke chapter 10 and verse 40, and it says that Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. And she came to Him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Jesus, the Messiah, is present. He's in the room. He's saying things that could change her life. And she's not even seeing it. She's focused on the dishes. She's focused on the food. She's focused on all the other stuff besides the Son of God sitting on her couch. You understand what I'm saying? And before we rush to judgment, before we say, good grief, Martha, what is your problem? how often do we do the same thing? We may believe in God's presence. We may believe that He answers prayer. We may even ask Him to do something for us and to do something for somebody that we care about. But then we become so focused, we become so distracted by our own schedules, our own agendas, our own fears, our own problems, our own stresses, our own emotions. We don't even see what He's doing. We don't even see His presence in our lives. We don't recognize He's right there doing what we need done because we're not looking for it. Some of us struggle with that. One reason I might not see God actually moving in my life is I'm not looking for Him to move in my life. I might not see it because His answer to my prayer maybe wasn't the one that I was looking for. I might be praying to God and I might be asking Him to do something. Help me with this job. Help me with this relationship. Take care of this. Heal this. And I might have, not only am I asking Him for those things, but I have in mind how He should answer those things. And it's not really me asking God to intervene and to act. It's really me going, God, here's my plan. Just put your rubber stamp of approval on that and let's get this done. And His answer may not match up with what I had in mind in the first place. And because of that, I don't see what He's actually doing. There's a story told in the Old Testament, 2 Kings chapter 6, of a huge army surrounding the prophet Elisha's house. This huge army has come to kill him. And his servant wakes up, and his servant opens the window, and he sees all these horses and chariots, and he's scared to death. And he says, what are we going to do? Hold on, I'm looking at my notes. That's not the story that I was going to do. That comes in a few minutes. Let me go back. We're going to come to that one in just a second. Put a pin in it. All right. Here's the story I meant to tell. There is a story in the Old Testament in 1 Samuel chapter 17 where these armies are lined up, and there's a guy named Goliath that comes out every day and he challenges the Israelites, and the king of the Israelites, Saul, doesn't know what to do. And I imagine Saul's praying, God, do something about this guy. He's scaring my troops to death. We can't fight. We can't move forward. We're stuck. And God's answer to that prayer is a little teenage shepherd boy from Bethlehem who comes to Saul and says, I'll take care of this. I got a slingshot and a rock. I got you. That is not, I imagine, what Saul was praying for. But God doesn't always work that way. God does some things sometimes that don't match what we have in mind. And in Isaiah chapter 55, God says this, my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways. There are things that I'm doing sometimes that have nothing to do with what you have in mind, but that's okay because my thoughts aren't your thoughts and my ways aren't your ways. You need to know that I'm working for you because I love you, and I'm going to answer the prayers in the best way they need to be answered for you. It may not be the answer that you're looking for. I might not be looking for God's answers. I might have in my mind a different answer than what He's giving, or sometimes I just choose not to look. I just choose not to look. Sometimes God is answering, God is moving, and I don't see it because I'm simply refusing to see it. And I'll rationalize things. I'll chalk things up to coincidence. Well, that just happened that way. I'll say, well, that's just luck. I just got lucky, or that's just fate. When in reality, it's God. It's His presence. It's His power at work. And I already know there are people who have heard Kennedy's story, who have heard the Allison story, who are saying to themselves and saying to other people, boy, that sure was lucky. But did you notice how Keith and Jennifer interpreted all these different events of this entire story? They are convinced that was God. They are convinced that was His power at work. From the school staff reviving her to her not having any brain damage to people helping to believing that Kennedy was given back to them for a reason. And they're not even completely sure what that is yet. But they're convinced that God chose them for a purpose and chose to bring her back for a reason. And it wasn't an accident and it wasn't coincidence. And if you don't believe that, it's because you choose not to believe that. And sometimes the reason I can't see God working is I'm bound and determined not to see God working. It's been an issue for a lot of people over the centuries. God's talking to His own people again in Isaiah Chapter 42, he says, in verse 20, he says, you've seen many things, but you paid no attention. Your ears are open, but you don't listen. God tells his people, I've done things for you. I've moved in powerful ways for you. I've protected you. I've loved you. I've forgiven you. And you chose not to look. I called out to you and you intentionally chose not to listen. Maybe it's just we have a lack of faith. Maybe it's because the answer to the prayer wasn't the one that I wanted. Maybe I just feel like this is really odd and weird to believe that God works this way. And I feel kind of foolish believing that. Whatever the reason, I may not see God moving in my life because I'm choosing not to see God moving in my life. And whatever the reason, you may come up with some other ones. Either I'm just not looking for it, or it's not the answer I wanted, or I'm just refusing to. But whatever it is, if you're sitting there this morning going, okay, well, how do I get there? How do I start seeing God moving in such a powerful way? How do I recognize it's him? How do I recognize that he's answering these prayers before I even ask him? 2 action steps and we're done. Okay, stick with me. First thing, I need to open my eyes. This is what I was talking about from 2 Kings chapter 6. I need to open my eyes. I need to actually look and open my eyes and see what God is actually doing. As I said, this guy, he opens the windows and he sees all these chariots and these horses and these soldiers around, and he just freaks out. He says, what are we going to do? And Elisha prays in 2 Kings chapter 6 and verse 17. Elisha prayed, open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see. And the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Now, you may have heard this story before. You may have heard me talk about this story before. But here's one thing that I want you to see that maybe you didn't notice before. I want you to notice that Elisha didn't pray that God would send the chariots and the horses of fire. What did he pray for? That the servant would be able to see the chariots and the horses of fire. Because they were already there. You see the difference? He didn't pray that God would send stuff. He prayed that the servant would be able to see what God was already doing. May that be our prayer as well. Almighty God, open my eyes. Let me see what you're doing. Let me recognize it. Let me see how you're moving. Let me see how you're working on this problem, how you're relieving my stress, how you're protecting me from this temptation, how you're removing my guilt, how you're calming my fear, how you're helping the folks that I'm praying about. Let me see it, God. I know that you're already moving. Let me see it. And the second thing that I got to do, I got to open my eyes, and then I got to trust. I got to trust that God is already moving. And that does take trust. It does take faith. But I want you to know that God does not blow us off. God doesn't ignore us. God definitely doesn't procrastinate. When I pray, when I reach out to God, when I call out to him, my God moves. And he moves right then. In Daniel chapter 9, Daniel begins a prayer to God. And an angel is sent to him in response. And the angel says this in Daniel chapter 9, verse 23. As you began to pray, as soon as you began to pray, an answer was given, which I have come to tell you. Do you see what God did there? Before Daniel was even done praying, God had already begun to answer Daniel's prayer. Before Daniel was finished, God was already moving to action. That just takes trust, folks. I have to trust that actually happens, that God still moves in that way today. And it requires faith. It requires me to let go of control and trust that God is going to do things. It requires me to be humble enough to accept whatever his answer is. But I got to trust that he's already begun to answer. Otherwise, I may never see it. Let's be a people who open our eyes. Let's be a people who trust. Let's be a people who believe God is already moving. Even sometimes when we haven't even started praying. And let's be amazed at what God does with our lives and the lives of people who care about because of it. There's a guy, a famous Christian speaker, whose name is Rob Bell. And Rob Bell tells a story of going on a hike with his toddler son one time around a lake. And while he's on the opposite side from the cabin they were staying in, he's on the opposite side of the lake, and a storm comes up. And it's just pouring, just sheets of rain pouring down on him. And he's got his little boy, and of course the little boy's just crying. He's getting all wet, and it's storming, the wind's blowing, the rain's coming down. And the whole walk all the way back to the cabin, he's just got his son wrapped up in his arms. And the whole way, as his son is kind of sobbing and crying and scared, he's got him wrapped, and he's just constantly repeating to him over and over, "It's okay. We're going to make it. Dad knows the way. We're going to be fine." I share that with you as we wrap up this morning because I don't know all of your stories. But I got to believe in a room this big with this many people, there's some people right now who are experiencing some kind of storm. It's crashing down. It's coming down. You're fearful. You're worried. You don't know how it's going to end. If you have a relationship with my God, I want you to understand that he is wrapping his arms around you already and saying, "Trust me. I know the way. I'm going to take care of you. We're going to make it." And if you've never known that kind of relationship with God before, today is the day to change that. And we invite you to come forward in just a moment and say, I want that. I want to experience that. I want to become that child of God, and we'll help make that happen. And if you've had that connection with him before and you've lost it, you've walked away from it, you don't see God in your life in that way anymore, I invite you to come forward and say, "I want it. I want to experience it again. I want to feel those arms around me. I want to hear his voice. I want to know everything's going to be okay. I want to trust in that. I want to see it happen." And we will do whatever we can to help you on that journey. If nothing else, when we stand in just a moment and sing a song together, if nothing else, please don't forget today, God's listening. God's present. God's active. God is on the move in your life. You just got to open your eyes and see it. If we can help make that happen, we want to. While together we stand and sing.
The Lord our God.